is being recorded and will be circulated after the event with the slides. We've got a fantastic lineup today. Really, really great speakers. I think it's probably worth saying, I'm going through all of the sign-ups. Barry, could you go to the next slide, please? Going through all of the sign-ups, it looked like people had some really kind of great ideas for what they wanted to get out of a London network. And I think being able to network with each other and share best practice were definitely things that were coming out of the kind of expectation from the sign-up. And it's probably worth saying that today's event, that's not going to necessarily be the focus of today's event. You'll meet some people, there'll be some people in the room and you might get to meet some people, but it's not going to be, it won't be networking and sharing of best practice. Today is very much about, as the kickoff meeting, a sort of a bit of a reflection on the year before and thinking about where we're going next and hearing from some of the leaders within the field of social prescribing to get their understanding and insight as to some of the work that's going on behind the scenes and what their hopes and aspirations are for social prescribing. It'd be great to know who's in the room. So if you could just complete, hopefully you've all signed up to, you're all logged into Slido. For those that are just joining, you can join via this QR code. So if you hover your phone over the camera, over the QR code in the corner of the window, it will take you through to the event. You can use your phone to post questions that we will bank for the panel later. And there'll be a few more of these polls. We'll be doing some word clouds later just to get a bit of a temperature check of the room. So there's, yeah, the other thing to say is that whilst we'll be using Slido for the Q&A for the panel, please do still use the chat function for talking to each other and introducing yourselves and saying hi and commenting and just getting involved, really. It's a real shame that obviously we can't all meet up. I think we're all dying to see each other in person, and in the absence of that, I think the chat box is a really, really nice way to sort of compensate for that lack of being in the same physical space. We'll be running through the event, hearing from lots of people, having a Q&A. We've got a fantastic session with English National Opera to round off the event, so please stick around for that. They're going to be scaling up their operations in the new year, and always really great for link workers to get an experience of the services that they're referring their clients onto. So please stick around for that. And then there's going to be an opportunity to feed into how we're going to run these sessions going forward. It's really important that we co-design these events with you. It's going to be a big focus for our activity next year. So please, no question too big, no suggestion too small. Just, yeah, tell us what you're thinking. That's going to really help us make sure that we're prioritizing our work in the right way and focusing on the things that are important. I'm going to hand over to our hosts. So we've got two fantastic hosts today. We've got Dr. Katie Coleman, who's the social prescribing clinical lead for North Central London, and very much an active GP in Islington, and just an all-round fantastic advocate and supporter of social prescribing. And Dan Hopewell, who, as many of you know, is the London dinosaur of social prescribing, but his official job title is Social Prescribing Regional Facilitator for London. So I'm going to hand over to Dan to kick off the event.
Great, thank you very much, Lianna. And I'm going to hand over to Marge Simpson, I think. But before I do that, just to introduce myself, yes, I'm one of the long-standing advocates and developers of social prescribing. I'm based at the Bromley by Bow Healthy Living Centre in Tower Hamlets, where we have been doing social prescribing in one form or another for approximately 20 years, and I've supported that journey. Of course, none of us were calling it social prescribing at the time. And I think, as Marge Simpson says, and this is one of our favourite quotes at Bromley by Bow, you know, changing the world is something we've no idea how long it's going to take. But social prescribing is definitely changing the world. Reflecting on today's event and reflecting on what I was going to say, I think it's probably true to say that social prescribing is probably one of the greatest innovations in health and social care in certainly the last 100 years. Of course, it's probably taking us back to how we thought about health and well-being hundreds, if not thousands of years ago, when we had potentially a more holistic understanding of how human beings work and what's important to them. And the reason it's so innovative and so important is that it focuses on what helps people to be well, what helps people to stay healthy, rather than focusing purely on illness and ill health. And I think that is really helpful. And the other thing is the way it brings together in partnership the health sector, the local authority sector, the voluntary sector, and communities themselves in a concerted action around health and well-being for individuals and for whole communities. I was also reflecting on the fact that probably about this time 5 years ago, Dr. Marie Polly, Dr. Michael Dixon, and various others of us were planning the first ever conference in the UK on social prescribing, which literally took place less than 5 years ago on the 20th of January 2016. And when one thinks about what that journey of 5 years has been, it is quite breathtaking. The adoption, the wholesale adoption of social prescribing within the NHS, which was heralded in General Practice 5-Year Forward View, which was published, I think, about 3 years ago now, and the NHS long-term plan that was published a couple of years ago. And then, of course, the formation of primary care networks. And in the past 18 months, the appointment of well over 1,000 social prescribing link workers across the primary care networks in England. This has been a tremendous breakneck journey. And of course, and we're going to talk about this in a minute, and I know that Katie and Gay are going to talk about what the last 12 months have been, and of course, how social prescribing has responded to the pandemic of COVID. But of course, like any fast introduction of an amazing innovation such as social prescribing, it's not without its challenges as well. And we'd love to hear from you about what you think some of those challenges and some of the risks are that social prescribing faces, and if coming in the coming year and beyond. It's obviously a whole panorama that's filled with opportunity, but nonetheless, getting it right is the task that we all have ahead of us, and helping to shape what the future is really, really important. So we would love to hear from you on Slido now about what you think the biggest risks are, or the biggest challenges, and what will make social prescribing successful, and even more successful than it has been in 2021. But just to end, really, to say that I think under the conditions of the pandemic, social prescribing really came into its own. And we all know that, and if any of you had the fortune to hear Michael Marmot talking about what's happened under COVID, of course, COVID has laid bare the inequalities and health inequalities in the UK in a way that has really focused attention more dramatically than ever before. But in all of that, one might suggest that social prescribing is the absolutely needed response to health and social inequalities in the UK. Social prescribing connects patients, connects communities with the very things that will improve their wider determinants of health, and in the long term help to build healthier and weller and happier and more fulfilled communities in the UK. So social prescribing, in a sense, has really come into its own in this last 12 months. And I think that's a great moment to hand over now to Katie and Gay to talk about what this last 12 months has meant for them as both social prescribing link workers and as GPs in London.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dan. And I'm afraid I'm not going to just do the last 12 months because I can't sort of like pack it all in such a sort of short period of time. But welcome, everybody. There's now 145 people in the room. It feels like there's so much energy and excitement. And I can see through the chats that everybody's just really, really bigging this up and really excited to be here. So thank you to everybody. So yeah, just a little bit about my journey around social prescribing, and thanks to Dan to handing over to me. Dan has been working on this for ages, and it's a real privilege for me to be following in his footsteps. So about 15 years ago, I happened to read an article about motivational interviewing and how people are much more likely to take action if they arrive at their own solutions. It took me another couple of years to actually find someone who could teach me how to take forward that technique. But it was through that approach that I then discovered that most people, when they are supported to identify their own solutions to their own problems, they rarely choose the medical route or a medical approach. And they're much more likely to want to focus on the things that really matter to them, and to really start to address those sort of wider determinants of health that are impacting on their day-to-day problems and their health indirectly. And most of that, as we all know, is delivered in our local communities by often non-statutory and voluntary sector organisations. And I soon very quickly realised that I needed some help to make those connections as a busy GP working in an inner city practice in Islington. And I was fortunate enough at the time to be working with initially an incredibly progressive primary care trust, and then an equally progressive CCG in Islington in North Central London. And they all recognised, all the people I work with recognised the importance and the benefits of proactive working. And so together we co-produced with local voluntary sector organisations, and I can see that Age UK Islington is in the room today, so welcome. And we co-produced a care navigation scheme, and all of us, and very much that's a precursor to what we all know now as Social Prescriber Link Workers. But today, my primary care network, Social Prescriber Link Worker, who is also in the room today, which is also super exciting, is a really key member of our primary healthcare team. And certainly without her, I couldn't do my job. So through the last 12 months, she and other social prescriber link workers working within our sort of area have really helped people. This has been an incredibly emotional journey for us over the last 12 months. People have really struggled, and the voluntary sector has really risen to the challenge and has supported people in a way that we could never ever have imagined. So just a huge thank you, and I'm just so excited to be here and for us all to be here on this journey today. So yes, welcome. And now I'm going to hand over the baton to Gabe.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Gabe Palmer, Social Prescriber Link Worker, and I'm based in South East London in Southwark. It's quite interesting. Dan's been here for many years. Katie's been here for many years, but I've been here in Social Prescriber Link Working world since March. And it's really been I'm going to give you a whistle-stop tour of what it's really been like to be a Social Prescriber Link Worker in the year 2020. The idea behind social prescribing really is about empowering an individual to take control of their health and well-being, to connect them to the local community, for us to be a part of the GP practice in the voluntary care sector, and really being a part of the teams to engage and ensure that people can link. However, March 2020 is going to be a date that's forever etched in our minds because everything changed. The pandemic changed, how we think has changed, so many things have changed, which meant that when I started this role, I had great ideas and it all kind of got sidelined. And now we became an emergency response team. We supported our GP practices in calling our clinically vulnerable, our shielding patients. We were also working from home. So the idea of being able to do face-to-face, which is what I really love, now became phone contacts, which is a little bit a different way of working. We then supported in terms of accessing food parcels for individuals, accessing medication deliveries, getting access to the befriending services. But as the months have progressed, we realised it's changed over the years. And as Dan has mentioned before, a lot of people had a lot of problems with other inequalities, with the housing, unemployment, many things before. But what the pandemic did was highlight it even more. So what I've realised is that isolation has been significant for all ages. Mental health has become even worse for all ages. Housing, unemployment, people's finances, families have been significantly impacted as this year has gone on. And that has meant that my role as a social prescriber link worker, and as our role, the needs of the people has increased, which means our role has become even more important than it was ever before. Because of the limited availability in the voluntary care, it's meant that we are now, our caseloads are increasing. The complexities means that I'm holding on to people for a lot longer than anticipated. We're supposed to be short-term contacts. I have people still on my caseload from June because they need my help and my support while we're waiting for the services to be available, which has meant that working from home, I'm not getting that regular contact. So actually it's becoming a bit more mentally tiring and mentally draining, thinking there are some days I'm just like, really, can I actually do this? Is this actually going to get me anywhere? But then when you hear the response of an individual, that when you ask them, how are you doing? They start in tears. And by the end of the conversation, say, thank you for listening. I really feel you've heard what I had to say. That makes a difference. I'll share a story of a woman, a Spanish lady who was referred to me because during the pandemic, she became unemployed, lost her finances, faced with eviction. I accessed one of our Spanish organizations and the welfare advisor was on annual leave. I pleaded with them and said, this woman is in desperate need. Can you help? They kindly took this case on. By the end of the week, they emailed back and said, thank you for this referral. This woman needed our help. By the end of the second week, she got assistance to text me in English, which she couldn't do before, to say thank you because you helped to save my life. They supported her with getting a housing, supported her with her employment, and supported her with her management of her finances. She felt that she could go on. So the days when it's really frustrated, I'm reminded of the work that we're doing. It's making a difference and it's really vitally important. How can I continue my role? How can we be really effective? That is something that's really important. As we've realized, social prescribers, we are pretty cool. And I think people are starting to realize that. My GPs are literally like, Gay, I'm just going to refer, I'm referring because they're seeing the difference. When the health of the individual comes back in and says, the social prescribers helped me to do this, they can now talk about their health. So now the GPs are like, fantastic. Now, thank you, GPs. I'm getting lots more referrals. So obviously we're doing our job, but it's making a difference. But we need the recognition. We are professionals in our own rights, and our GPs and so many of the people are recognizing our role is powerful and it can help to make a difference. But we need clear communication amongst us as a whole, what our roles are, the importance of our roles, and how we can work together. What this pandemic has proven to me is that we don't work individually. We work the health, statutory services, voluntary care, we work as a whole. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village and a community to make a difference to an individual's life. So it's about all of us working together to make a difference. But also we need a little bit of money to make the difference. For us to keep referring, it needs the voluntary care, need the support. We're referring, and they need that money to make the difference in what they're doing. So social prescribers, you're doing a fantastic job. Keep it moving. We're going to be here for a very, very long time. And if you could all give us a pay rise, we'd really appreciate it. That's the end of me. Thank you.
Katie, you're on mute. I'm really sorry.
Oh, well, just wanted to say thank you. So thank you, Gay. That was amazing. You won't have been able to see what's in the chat as yet, but there's been a huge amount of applause for all of the amazing work that you've been doing. So thank you so much for that. So we are now running a wee bit behind time. So I've been given the hard job of keeping us to time. So I'm going to move us really swiftly on to our first sort of set of speakers, where we're going to look at vision and strategy for social prescribing in London. And first up, we've got Nick from NHS England. So over to you, Nick.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Gay. I absolutely agree. Social prescribing link workers are totally cool and have really proven their soul and contribution this year. So really fantastic to be joining you this morning. Can I have the first slide, please? So the first thing I really want to do is to say a massive thank you to all the social prescribing link workers in the audience. and everybody who is helping them because you have made a fantastic and huge difference to many, many, many people in communities, often people who were the most clinically and socially vulnerable in our communities this year. And it is much, much appreciated. And I just know how many of you have also had to balance working from home and all the things that you've been balancing with families and children at home as well. So a massive, massive, massive thank you. It's a year since I took up this post, and I came out, one of the first things I did was come out to the Southwest London event and meet so many of you, which was brilliant to be in the room with you, and I'm looking forward to doing that as well. And I did think I'd have a year traveling around the country, finding out a lot more about social prescribing, but COVID obviously had very different ideas for all of us. And I think, Gay, you absolutely have sort of laid out the sort of challenges that we've seen, that we knew that many, many people were experiencing social determinants that affected their health and well-being. And the pandemic has emphasised that and affected different groups of people in a bigger way than others, such as Black and minority ethnic communities and areas of deprivation. And of course, the pandemic that we're in, not just has posed clinical challenges for us, but has posed some social and economic challenges. And so, yes, social prescribing link workers will be around for a very long time and very needed as part of that team effort in local communities. And I think the ray of light, one of the big rays of light for me, has been showing just the magic of social prescribing link workers. I think what you've demonstrated is just how adaptable you are. Not only have you been supporting your existing caseloads, but also supporting people who are shielding or self-isolating. You've shown just how incredibly creative you are. And the image on the previous slide was from Gateshead, where they supported voluntary sector organisations to turn their offers online, and that was a lovely sort of exercise class for older people. But for people experiencing digital exclusion, you've really thought creatively and worked with communities and local partners to be able to come up with different ways of connecting people and helping people who were lonely or struggling with some of the basic practical and emotional support. And I think the other thing that you've shown, and I think this is one of your unique contributions in primary care, is your absolutely amazing abilities around partnership working with mutual aid groups, grassroots community groups, voluntary sector, local authorities, education for children, just amazing ways of connecting people and really knowing what's happening locally and being able to make the offer much bigger by getting everyone to work together. So, you know, just incredible skill set and contribution. And Gay, I'm not at all surprised that your GP says pretty cool and you get a lot more referrals. So a huge thank you to you, but also a huge thank you to the London social prescribing team. We know you have a fantastic history of social prescribing in London. And I just wanted to say thank you for the incredible leadership. Jagan, Dan, Mohan, Susie, Bill and Lianna, so many more people. But I think what I wanted to say was not only have you helped London, but you've really helped us nationally. When this crisis hit, your experience and your ability to support link workers across the whole country was really, really fantastic. And Ray and Mohan, that first webinar with over 700 link workers was just incredible. And we really appreciate all the support you've given. So I think the message I wanted to say is, yes, social prescribing is needed now more than ever, and you've proven what's possible. And just to remind people, Dan, as you set out, there are many policy commitments in the long-term plan. The manifesto also talks about expanding social prescribing and the additional roles going into social prescribing. And yes, we are seeing good progress towards that target of 1,000 link workers next year. Our soft intelligence is 1,300, and then we've had the rapid recruitment campaign where we've had over 400 expressions of interest. And I just wanted to say a big thank you to London, because a quarter of those have come from London, and that's incredibly impressive. So we're really committed to supporting all those new link workers and supporting you to enable them to really make the difference. So So we know social prescribing's made a difference. We know it's here to stay. It's well embedded in policy. And if we think about future policy is going to have to address the health inequalities in our society, and social prescribing has an incredible role to play, but also in the bigger role that the NHS can play as an anchor organisation when you think about green social prescribing and sustainability. So really important as we go forwards. So could I have the next slide, please?
Nick, I'm just conscious that
yes,
we really need to sort of keep moving on. So
yes.
just another 30 seconds to a minute, if that's all right.
Yeah, super. So all I'm going to say is here I've captured some of the things that we want to do around baking in the learning from COVID. So we have some new information coming out in the new year about an enhanced supervision offer. We really want to develop training and development so that we look at accreditation and things for social prescribing link workers. We want to do a lot. We recognise the challenges, Katie, at the moment in terms of pressure on primary care, but we know spring, summer, we're going to need to do a lot on reminding people what the role's about and its contribution to local communities. We have some new areas that we want to help spread and scale for learning next year: children, young people, green social prescribing, personal health budgets, and absolutely want to support the development of sustainable models and for the VCSE. And I can say more about that, but James will probably pick up on that as well when he talks about NASP. So the last slide, Katie, is just to remind people of the fantastic support offer. I'm not going to say anything. It's just say, please use what we've got available nationally. If you've got new link workers, make sure they know about this. And I'll hand you over because you're now going to talk about what's available in the region.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nick. And please, if you've got questions for Nick, pop them in the chat or Slido, and we'll pick those up as part of the panel questions and answers. So thank you very much. And moving swiftly on. So next, we've got up Billen and Dr. Jagan John, who is representing the Healthy London Partnership. Welcome.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you all. Gay specifically, it was really moving to hear your experiences. So thank you for that. Just to say, it's a really privileged to be here speaking to you all, and just echoing everyone else in thanking the link workers for the huge amount of resilience, flexibility, and the ambition and the hard work that you guys have kind of been through this incredibly difficult year. I think the impact you're having is amazing. So, Healthy London Partnership, so our aim is to make London the healthiest global city by working with our partners to improve London's health and well-being, so everyone can live healthier lives. So, we've already talked about how the social and economic environment has a bigger impact on people's health than healthcare alone, and obviously COVID has exposed these issues. We also know that social prescribing, the impact it can have on health inequalities, and through identifying the barriers and the challenges and focusing resources on the most vulnerable and excluded. And I guess just to say that the value of social prescribing, as you've heard, is really seen and recognised by the leaders across London. And that's basically why our partnership, our programme exists. It's to take that forward and to make sure that the system is supported, to make sure that social prescribing will thrive into the future. So just a little bit about the partnership. So we are made up of various partners from across London. So ourselves in Health London Partnership, so we lead the approach to support acceleration and embedding of social prescribing. We have within the partnership the NHS England regional associates, so the regional facilitators Dan and Susie, who support local systems to bring partners together and develop social prescribing. We have the learning coordinator, so Lianna, who introduced the session today, who supports link workers across London. And we work closely with the London primary care team and the training hubs, who support the workforce also and ensure kind of the link workers are embedded within PCNs effectively. We also work in partnership with the NHS England London Regional Clinical Network, so Joe Fraser and his team, who are leading on embedding social prescribing and personalised care more widely into the pathways of the NHS. And we also work closely with the GLA, who are doing some fantastic work on influencing health policy. with social prescribing being at the heart of their inequalities agenda, which Tom will speak to a bit more in a couple of minutes. And also work closely with London Plus, who are supporting to capacity build the voluntary sector, and without which, social prescribing just wouldn't work. So just a bit about our work. So we are really driven by national, regional and local priorities. However, most importantly, responding to the challenges that you guys on the front line are facing. So all of the information that we get from you and the insights from your peer support sessions, from your surveys, from your local network meetings, they all do come back and they all drive kind of our work plan and our agenda, and it really does drive our, all of our priorities. We do recognise that you guys are the experts, so we try and make sure that we are doing a lot of engagement and co-production as much as possible. So we hear your issues around kind of increasing complexity of the people you're seeing, the increased demand you're having on your time, the lack of onward services, and in some cases kind of the lack of support that you're getting personally. So a core remit of our role is to ensure that your challenges are being heard at a regional level, but also to Nick's team at a national level, and make sure that that's being fed into her strategy and their policy decisions. Just really quickly a bit about kind of our main focus. We can break it down into about 4 areas. So we do a lot around comms engagement and then knowledge and resources. So we're about raising the awareness of social prescribing and the impacts it has, building relationships and a big knowledge of the landscape across London, developing resources, case studies, guidance and good practice, so that can be shared across London. We have a big priority around supporting the workforce, so making you guys feel more valued in the work that you do. We also provide a flexible resource to local systems across London, so supporting the development of strategy and delivery programs to embed social prescribing locally, and we support systems in building the case for investment. And then finally, we do a little bit about, we do work on innovation, so supporting local systems to innovate and develop new models of social prescribing. So for example, the fantastic work that Kath Evans and Mark Scott are doing in North East London around children and young people, and also working with partners to explore social prescribing beyond primary care, so looking at scaling models of social prescribing in secondary care, mental health, maternity and learning disabilities, just as an example. So going forward, we will continue to work in London and to make sure we've got the right infrastructure in place for social prescribing to really thrive, and make it priority that our work is co-produced through development of things like the Link Workers Champions Network, but also really making sure we're working closely with primary care networks and the Clinical Leads Network, which is being formed. And I'm just going to hand over to Jagan now, Jagan's the personalised care lead, clinical lead for London, and really championing social prescribing. So he'll be talking about the Clinical Leads Network.
Jagan, just to let you know, Billen has done lots of fantastic talking, but has left you with 2 or 3 minutes. So over to you now.
It's probably better for your audience, Katie. Thank you, everyone, and thank you so much for all that you do. I can't thank you enough. And Gay's presentation discussion was so inspiring for me, not only as a GEP, but also as a clinical lead for the whole of London. So as part of this and a part of the learning, as you all know, the message in London is we love our social prescribing link workers. And we really appreciate the work that you do. And it's been heightened specifically during the COVID of how important you really are to the infrastructure of primary care. As part of the journey in London, one thing that we have done is try to create a clinical lead network. And part of that is to create people within each individual care system, Northeast, Northwest, Southeast, Southwest, and Central, to really champion our social prescribing link workers and also support those PCN clinical leads with their support. We know that we've heard issues across London. We've also heard great practice across London. And one of the things that we've done in London is to create this clinical lead network to really get, how do we support our link workers? What more can we do? And more importantly, how can we use the intelligence of our link workers to design better systems in London and influence our partners and commissioners in terms of working? We've heard some really fantastic work with children in London. We've heard things in CAMS. We've got some fantastic work on violence reduction and gangs and social prescribing link workers in London. And we've also had a considerable amount of interest from all of our areas to have more link workers, more than any other part of the system in the country. And Nick, you know, joining us is really important for us to kind of support the national direction and influencing the national direction going forward. But certainly what we want to do is harmonise the clinical leadership and so that they can support the link workers, and also harmonise the way that we try to improve the conditions that link workers have across our system going forward. And that could be through training, through Healthy London partnerships and support, but also wider in terms of, you know, comparing what best practice is across the system. And certainly with the wider element of new roles going forward, it's also important to really support link workers in terms of the wider PCN workforce and how we, because a lot of it, there is a lot of crossover, and there is also a lot of opportunity for us to do some great work. I'm in the middle of, as my chair role for a CCG, I'm in the middle of COVID vaccination. And for example, across London, we're really struggling with the BME community who are high risk, over 80. We're just not getting. Clearly, our link workers are an important part of trying to help solve some of those issues going forward. But I'm gonna, I can see Katie hovering, so I will say thank you very much. We are here as a team for you, to support you, and anything that you can suggest, we're willing and able, and we're certainly, with our clinical leaders from each of our systems, happy to share as much as we can, and also support you. Thank you very much for all that you do. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jay and Billen, for that. That was fantastic. So remember, keep adding your questions to Slido, and keep sort of voting which ones you want to be prioritised for the panel. So next up, we have James Sanderson from the National Association of Social Prescribing. So James, over to you.
Good morning, Katie. Hello, everybody. It's great to be with you all this morning. I'm really delighted and grateful to hear all of the presentations that have been so far this morning. Gay's presentation was just fantastic. And again, just as other speakers have said, I just want to provide my real thanks to everybody that's involved in making social prescribing a success. I know that you've been doing some absolutely fantastic work in the London region over the past few months, and thank you very, very much for all that you are doing for people. So I've got a dual role at the moment. I'm National Director Personalised Care for the NHS, and also the Chief Executive of the newly formed National Academy for Social Prescribing, which was set up by the Secretary of State, Matt Hancock, last year in order to create a real focus on social prescribing across the country. Now, combined with the work that we're doing in NHS England that Nick has outlined to put the infrastructure in for social prescribing, a massive new investment, we recognised that we also needed to support the voluntary sector, we needed to support the evidence, we needed to champion social prescribing, promote it, make some noise, look at ways of sharing best practice. So the National Academy for Social Prescribing has been formed as the first charity in the world dedicated to the pursuit of social prescribing. And actually, you know, we're all pioneers in this fantastic area. Social prescribing is a relatively new concept, other than you know, Dan and Sir Sam Etherington and others across the country who've been practicing versions of social prescribing for many years. But you know, we are at the cutting edge of a massive transformation in the health service. We still need drugs. Obviously, at the moment, the country and primary care networks are focused intensely on a vaccination, much needed vaccination for us all. But actually, we also recognise that the medical model is limited, and actually, there's sort of issues that people are facing in society, the big issues that are creating lots of the health problems that people have. Those things don't need a medical solution. We've got to find non-medical psychosocial solutions for people. We know that supporting people in the community, getting them active, getting them connected, helping them based on what matters to them is going to make a real difference to their lives. And as a health economy, we're investing the most significant amount of money, any health economy across the world, in social prescribing now, putting it in the GP contract, creating this opportunity for social prescribing to be a mainstream part of the NHS is a really exciting venture. So the National Academy for Social Prescribing, here's the aims of the organisation. We've developed 6 core products that we're going to be taking forward over the next year. So we've got an academic collaborative working with a number of academic institutions across the country to improve the evidence base and to look at providing support for link workers of the things that are going to work best for individuals in communities. We're going to work on a program called Thriving Communities, which is a grant program for voluntary sector organisations to put much needed resources into voluntary sector bodies and to create learning networks across the country that can really champion social prescribing in local areas. And we've just developed 7 regional hubs for NASP in order to take that work forward. We're developing a global alliance for social prescribing. We are working with a number of partners across the world to look at how we can spread social prescribing activity internationally. We're developing a clinical champions program that's going to expand the number of clinicians that are involved in supporting social prescribing and creating the leadership that we need, alongside the fantastic leadership that link workers are already providing in this area. We're also developing an ambassador program with a number of high-profile individuals that can really champion social prescribing and help support the resources that are needed. We are also supporting the opportunity for an innovation program so that we can bring partners together to look at how we can continue to innovate and deliver really fantastic opportunities for social prescribing interventions, much like the brilliant work that English National Opera have done with their programme Project Breathe. So lots of things that we're going to be taking forward as part of the National Academy for Social Prescribing, and we look forward to working with you all over the course of the next year. This is a truly exciting agenda, and again, really grateful to everybody for the support that you're all providing at the moment with it. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, James. So many exciting things going on, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions that people want to ask you. So get ready. Right, over to Dr. Tom Coffey. So working at the GLA Community Development Department to sort of give us a bit of the London view. Tom, over to you.
Can I have the next slide, please, actually? So I'm here on behalf of Sadiq Khan. I'm his health advisor. I'm a GP in London. And I would have to say, actually, the social prescriber at my practice is probably even cooler than Gay, and she is absolutely fantastic and has done much of the same work that Gay has identified as well. So Sadiq, he does believe that you as link workers are going to be part of the solution to address London health inequalities. He has got this ambition for London to be the healthiest global city, and thinks this cannot be done unless we've got effective, widespread social prescribing in London. And we now are almost there. And as people have said, London has grabbed this opportunity amazingly. And next slide, please. Sadiq's got a health inequality strategy, 5 main things: young people, air pollution, mental health in schools, childhood obesity, and number 5 is social prescribing across London. He thought these are the 5 most important things in London that he can champion and do to address health inequalities. You are part of our solution. Next slide, please. Sadiq recognises that health and health services and medicines aren't part of the solution for health problems. It's about health in all policies. And you will see very clearly, that he's used his planning rules. No more fast food shops within 400 metres of a school. He's banned advertising of fast food near schools and on the tube stations. He's using violence reduction, and he's got a pilot now on social prescribing with young people to address violent crime in London. He really believes social prescribing is part of our solution. Next slide, please. We have worked together across London to try to create social prescribing, to make sure we support the volunteers, to support the voluntary sector, because without a healthy voluntary sector, link workers' role can be very difficult. If you haven't got the services to refer on to, it can become very challenging. And Sadiq has done his best to try to improve and invest in voluntary sector across London. We have done lots of work ourselves. We've had workshops during this COVID crisis to share the learning across London, to bring the link workers together, to make sure that the East and West, North and South know what each other's doing and can share that work across London. We've, next slide, please. Part of the COVID recovery, we've got 9 missions. I'm not going to go through all 9, Katie, rest assured. But the 2 main health ones are, can we have by 2025 250,000 wellbeing ambassadors in London? By 2025, can we make sure every Londoner lives in a healthy food neighbourhood? And we believe that social prescribing and the way you can embrace linking general practice to the voluntary sector and building a strong community is part of the solution for London health inequalities and recovering from the London COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. We've across London developed our website to share information, a network to make sure people come together, and London Plus to promote the work of the voluntary sector. Sadiq is amazingly grateful, as I am, for the work of social prescribing and link workers in our practices, in our communities. We see you as part of our solution through the pandemic and to address health inequalities in London. And for myself and for Sadiq, a big thank you. Finished.
Fantastic. Thank you, Tom. Amazing. That was just brilliant. You absolutely finished on time. Best timekeeper yet. So thank you everyone for those amazing sort of presentations. Lots and lots of information to be shared. And I'm now going to hand over to Dan, who's going to sort of take us on to the panel questions and answers. And we've been collating some of the questions that are sort of getting the top votes on Slido. So yeah, over to you now, Dan.
Great, thank you very much, Katie. And what a fantastic set of presentations and great reflections on social prescribing and the important contribution of it. Okay, I'm going to run through some of these questions and we're going to be fairly brief with our responses if we can. I'd like to invite you, Conchia, who you haven't presented yet, so if you could just introduce yourself as well. But could you talk about, and then I'll come to a couple of others, could you talk about, in a sense, how social prescribers can influence the system? And I think it'd be interesting to link that to the next question, which is sort of about, how do we help general practice to understand social prescribing where in the cases that it doesn't? And I think that's the second question alludes to as well. Conchia, can I bring you in now?
Thanks, Dan. I'm Conchia from 1 Westminster. I'm the head of social prescribing. As I think about this question, I think about all the brilliant things that social prescribing has done and can do in influencing the system, especially when I think about giving the extra time, the hand-holding, building the confidence, and giving people the agency to change their lives. The model around social prescribing just demonstrating how much up and down the country it's already working. People's lives are being impacted. The way that social prescribing currently works, connecting people to the voluntary and community sector in a way that it hasn't done before. Social prescribers, they understand people because they have that chance to really connect and build those relationships with people. And for example, when someone goes to their GP and they present with stress and anxiety, a social prescriber can take that away and look beyond just the presentation of the stress and anxiety. They're able to find out that person has, for example, maybe debt, or someone in their family has died, and they're able to work through those issues and strip them down. And I think it's that unboxing of those issues and just being able to really handhold that person through that issue and help them to build that confidence that makes a huge difference in the system. And it's a little bit disruptive because it means that social prescribers see less people, for example, than a GP appointment would, but that extra time does develop into a relationship that empowers that person to move on. And they can also take this back to their families and to friends and other people in their neighborhood. So we are also then passing on a legacy through that person. So I think it's quite a powerful thing. Though it's disruptive, it's really great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Mohan, could I bring you in now as one of the kind of GP advocates for social prescribing, one of the many? How do we help social prescribing link workers really support transformation within primary care and help primary care kind of make this shift into sort of this social model of health and take all the fantastic talk that Consia gave about the value of social prescribing and really transmit that into the system? Oh, Mohan's having difficulty unmuting.
Excellent. I'm there. All good?
Great, fantastic.
Brilliant. Sorry, Dan. So the question around how can we get link workers to support the wider system is
yeah, and how can they support the transformation of primary care? And in the cases where general practice doesn't quite understand social prescribing, how do we help it to really understand it, but also help this ongoing transformation of primary care into the sort of social model of health?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, so I think that's really key, isn't it? So the link workers identifying the support which is required for our residents, which are non-medical. I think showing the evidence, how it's worked, what patient groups impact on general practice, impact on the patient themselves, and also us as clinicians and the wider team have been really key, certainly in Merton and South West London, to try and get people on board. I think another key aspect as well is what the link workers have done is open the door for the other roles to come in to also support them as a sort of combined team. So the health and wellbeing coaches and the care coordinators, which I think will work well in coming months. But in particular, I think it's addressing what the need is, identifying your assets and also bringing that all around together. So I think a really exciting time. So I think it's getting the evidence, showing what's worked, listening to what the need is in your particular area and having the right people around the table so you can really take this forward. I think if you haven't got the right people, then it's not going to go very far. So they'll be my top tips. And I know time is short, so I'm going to keep it sweet. Thank you.
Great. And could I hand over? Thank you, Mohan. That's really fantastic. And I know you play a role within the RCGP as well around social prescribing and personalised care. So it's really great to have you advocating for it with other clinicians. And Jagan as well, talking from a general practice perspective, what would your tips be for social prescribing link workers about how they can really help the system to understand what they're doing?
I think, thank you, Dan. I think it's a really good question. Part of this is down to the way that we embed transformation. So as a system, are we using social prescribing link workers across the system? So the challenge across London is whether it be maternity, whether it be cancer, whether it be long-term conditions, whether it be any of the things that can be done across the system, how does a social prescriber influence the way we do that work clinically? And I think that is part of the change that is happening across London, that we are embedding, as Gay mentioned and others, colleagues on the chat, we're embedding them as an expert of understanding the community and how we support those particularly health inequalities, i.e. those vulnerable groups who don't necessarily go and influence general practice. And one thing that we are trying to do within all our areas is that we need to embed link workers in every single part. And I sometimes wonder, Dan, that I actually think that we've probably got the most difficult job, because social prescribing is literally the whole of the NHS. It really is. If you look at some of the traditional roles that people have, care coordinators, advocates, they're actually link workers. They were just called by other names for the last 20 years. So, and really it's about the focus from the medical model to the holistic model, making the patient or the resident the center of the discussion. And that's what personalization is all about. And that's what social prescribing link workers, they're advocates, and they're the people that support people with the holistic care. So the answer to your question is, we need to get link worker opinion across a wider system. We need to embed it in the transformation work across the whole of the NHS in London, and also use it to work with people like Tom and James and the wider system about how we bridge that gap between all those services that are out there. And I've seen lots of things about the link workers are a really important part of the voluntary sector in terms of bringing the voluntary sector to the equation to support our residents. And funding apart, it is a really important part that we really see this as a whole system approach rather than an individual GP approach, which is, NHS England have been fantastic and supportive to try and get link workers embedded in normal primary care. But actually, the challenge is on all of us to try and bring this across the whole system further. So using the RCGP, using the CCGs, the local authorities, using those patient expert voluntary sector groups, those health and wellbeing boards, that's where it all needs to happen. It needs to come all across the system. And I think we're getting there, Dan, but we've got a long way to go.
Great, thank you very much indeed, Jagan. That's brilliant. We're going to move on to another question now that's been asked, which is, and Nick, I think you suggested you might be able to give a response on this, which is, as well as introducing social prescribing link workers, and we know that eventually we'll have probably 3, 4 or 5 per primary care network, we're also in the coming period going to be introducing health and wellbeing coaches and care coordinators, and they're coming in fairly quickly now. Any thoughts about how these 3 roles might be working together?
Yes, fantastic. Thanks, Dan. So we've got, I think, all of these roles are around personalised care, so they can all help the transformation of primary care, and they're really about helping people develop the knowledge, skills and confidence to live their lives their way, be part of local communities, and to have more choice and control about their lives. So we've been doing quite a lot of work to look at these 3 roles. I think what's really important is that at a local level, people think through how they work together and how we start to triage the appointments that come in. So I think what we're seeing across the country, Dan, is the care coordinator playing a really valuable role in being able to connect up, coordinate care for people across the many parts of, some people have to move lots of different parts of the health system and social care system. So being able to use person-centered plan and to identify proactively who they are. Health coaches, what we know is social prescribing link workers use these techniques in their work already. Katie mentioned the motivational interviewing, so it's not that social prescribing link workers stop doing that, but they give that capacity for the more specialist, more in-depth health coaching work around particular sort of issues. So it's really about how they can work together at a local level. And obviously Jagan's just set out the sort of unique contribution that social prescribing link workers can play. So we're really happy to support London with a follow-up webinar around these 3 roles and how they can help with the transformation of primary care and communities, and what we're learning across the country about how people are putting them together. But I think your point about the 3 to 4 social prescribing link workers is really, really important, because it's having the capacity there to work with local communities. And what we're seeing is people having more specialist roles as well as the generalist roles, so that there is a link worker to focus on working with children, young people, or in other areas we've seen working with refugees or particular groups that are what the population need is. So tying this into population health management on what the needs are of the local population, working with local partners and having a more targeted approach, I think is going to be really important going forwards.
Great, thank you so much, Nick. James, I'm going to come to you now. And I think there's a real sort of question about the funding of the voluntary sector. And we know that, I don't know if you know this, but we've just done some very interesting research in London, in 4 London boroughs. And it seems to be that between about 50% and in some boroughs up to 69% of onward referrals are currently going to social welfare, legal advice and financial capability support around housing and debt. A service that is already completely overwhelmed with demand prior to social prescribing, if you like. It'd be really interesting to hear your reflections on the funding for the voluntary sector. And I know obviously there's the funding coming out at the moment, but it'd be interesting to think about sort of what that direction of travel looks like going forwards, really, because social prescribing is so dependent upon having those services available for people to be referred on to.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Dan. It's a big challenge, as we know, and actually it's a challenge that requires a full societal solution. I mean, this isn't just about health, because if we think about the issues that people are seeking support from link workers for, as you mentioned, Dan, I mean, financial advice and guidance, housing, other forms of debt, relationships, loneliness, social isolation, you know, they're all issues that go way beyond the remit of health. So what we're trying to encourage is the opportunity for partnerships at both a national and a local level to get sustainable funding packages through to voluntary sector organisations who are the lifeblood of social prescribing. And, you know, voluntary sector partners have done an amazing job over the past few months in supporting people, as we know. What we're trying to do through the Thriving Communities initiative is encourage partnerships across what we call the 4 zones of social prescribing. So those organisations involved in arts and culture, those that are involved in sport and exercise, those involved in supporting the natural environment, and those in the advice and guidance sector, like money and housing and debt, etc. And we're working together with the Arts Council, with Sport England, with Natural England and the Money and Pensions Advisory Service to look at the opportunity for creation of much more sustainable programmes. So the Thriving Communities initiative is a starting point for that. Yes, it's a fairly modest programme. It's a £1.4 million grant programme to begin with. But what we're hoping for is that will create a blueprint that will demonstrate just how important it is to have both the collaboration at a local level between those voluntary sector partners offering a range of services across those zones of social prescribing, and the agencies, the statutory agencies at a national and local level supporting those through funding. My personal view is that we should not create a mechanism that involves the money following individual patients to the activity. I think then that becomes a managed NHS service, and in many ways will destroy the very heart of what we're trying to achieve here, which is a non-medicalised solution. But I do think the NHS, along with its many other partners, needs to work collaboratively to find better solutions. And that's where the Thriving Communities programme, I think, will hopefully give us that blueprint.
Great, thank you so much, James. That's really, really helpful to hear that thinking and how that thinking is developing. I'm sure that it's something that we will all want to be able to contribute to in the year ahead, about how we think about how those services are supported. And of course, it's not always about funding as well. It's also about supporting small community groups that don't necessarily need funding, but maybe need a bit of infrastructure to allow them to function. And there was a very interesting report that came out a couple of weeks ago about, that was actually commissioned by NHS Property Services, about how NHS buildings and general practices can support the voluntary sector in terms of how the voluntary sector might run some of its services where possible from those sorts of buildings. So you might start to bring together the voluntary sector, co-locating with primary care, as it does in a number of places, Bromley by Bow being one of several in the country. Gay, I'm going to turn to you now, I think, to give you the last word for this panel. Reflecting on what you've heard just now and thinking about next year and your role as a social prescribing link worker, and how you can help, or how you think you might be able to help and influence the system in Southwark, and how you might take some of these discussions forwards about supporting sort of the understanding within the system, the bringing together of these partnerships. Any reflections from you about the year ahead for you?
Yeah, thanks, Dan. We've been doing some of that already. So as social prescribers, we've already been connecting with our cancer services and we're liaising with them. So now we're trialing a pathway where people who need the local support, so the cancer services in the hospital already have link workers that know the national generic information, but it's really about the local information. So we started a pathway, we had our conversation with them, and now we're accepting referrals from the head and neck and the lung team to how we can support individuals locally. I've had the opportunity over the time to then speak to members of our CCG, members of our clinical directors in the GP practices. I'm a kind of a force to be reckoned with. I think we've got something that can make a difference, so I don't mind having the conversations. But it's about understanding how a GP practice works as well. So it helps us to help them. It's being in the meetings, having the conversations with the GPs, the receptionists, the whole team as a whole, let them understand what we're doing so they understand how our role can help them. It's really important talking to the influencers. So it's the CCGs, those who have the money, those in those positions of influence, kind of saying, this is what we're recognizing. Our evidence is there. We need your help. We need our support. We've been linking with the voluntary care. We get a lot of the organizations to come into our meetings so we can understand what they do and how we can work together. So it's really about making our names and our voices be heard and let people see the difference. And once we do that, we start to see it's going to take time. And as I said, some of our GPs were reluctant, but now that we've been attending meetings, we're explaining what we're doing for their patients. But when they ask us, do you know of an organization that can help with, we're able to support them. So if they can see how well we can work, that makes a difference. But it's the people that make the influence, the CCGs and those who hold the finances, that's where we need to kind of push and say, this is what we are doing. This is what makes a difference. As you said, co-production, open our GP practice up, have teas and coffees, open the space up. So it's not just about health focus, it's about the well-being. Bring organizations in. Again, one of our GP practices, that's what we're doing. We're opening up as social values, a space where someone can come in, they've got an appointment, but they need help with something else. It's a one-stop shop, so we can really engage with an individual, making it more real, making it real, and not just the talk, not just the health and medical. It's about us making it a difference as a whole together. Just a few ideas.
Fantastic. That's really uplifting and really enthusing to hear those thoughts, and completely agree with everything that you've just said. It's also about kind of making some physical changes within general practice as well. Yeah. Okay, great. We're going to move on now to the next section of today, and thank you everybody on the panel for those wonderful responses. As Nick, you've just suggested we might have another session about how those roles work together.
Yeah, very happy.
Thank you so much for that. And just to say, this is the first of our London town halls. We want to run these periodically, and one of the questions we're going to ask you towards the end is how often you would like these London town halls to run. So, we have a limited amount of time this morning, but we're going to be covering many of these topics further on through 2021. Now, we've got two amazing videos to bring us in now. Professor Kevin Fenton, who is the London Regional Director of Public Health, has got a pre-recorded message of thank you to social prescribers. And then that's going to be followed by the premiere of a film around social prescribing in London this year that's been put together by Healthy London Partnership. It's been worked on by Kerry, Billen, Susie, myself and the team in London. It's an amazing film and you're going to be the first people who get to see it. So we're going to have that straight after Kevin's address to us all. And then we've got an amazing finale that I'll bring to you after this, but we stay on after the films because we've got something fantastic coming up later with E&O.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Fenton. I'm the Regional Director of Public Health for London. I want to begin by just thanking you for being here today and for having participated in this event, which really aimed to bring together colleagues from across the city to reflect on the progress which has been made on social prescribing, to think about what it means as we are in the midst of this pandemic, and to begin to think about the future and what we want to achieve together. I know that you have made tremendous progress and partners have made tremendous progress in implementing and scaling social prescribing across the city. And there are so many great examples of the work that you continue to do every day. And I firmly believe that social prescribing is going to be an integral part of the solutions that we will need as we emerge from this pandemic. Building resilience, strengthening prevention, and creating stronger links and bonds between the NHS and community services. So as we move forward, I want to first of all say thank you for what you do. Thank you for being there and being alongside communities, and thanking you for helping the NHS to understand what communities need, how communities function, and how communities can be better connected to the work that we need to do. So as a system leader and on behalf of our system leaders in London, I want to thank you for what you're doing. I wish you all the best as you prepare to leave the conference. And I look forward to hearing more about your successes, about the lessons that you're learning, and most of all, about the lives that you're changing. Thank you.
Social prescribing, I think, really will revolutionise the way surgeries treat patients as well as the care that the NHS provides.
I'm always thinking, does this patient need the help of a social prescriber? It's a tool we use now in every consultation.
I think social prescribing is going to make a massive difference in the NHS.
Integrating social prescribing into primary care service delivery is huge.
It's about actually what's making the biggest difference for people in their day-to-day lives.
People need to be listened to. People want to feel that they matter. People want to take control and charge of their well-being.
Social prescribing, I think, is an exciting opportunity for us to think about health differently and to act on our health differently.
To be able to see the difference that social prescribing is making in people's life is amazing. Our health is not just about how well we feel physically. Our health is about how we feel emotionally.
Social prescribers, we work in the GP and we basically help patients with their health and their well-being. We help them with many non-medical support needs.
At present, over 50% of GP appointments are taken up by people whose health issues are to do with socio-economic factors, which the GP is never going to be able to resolve.
And I think if you're thinking about the individual, your patient, it's really important to think of them as a whole individual. And if you really want them to improve in their health, you have to think about the rest of their well-being.
The traditional GP consultation is that 10-minute slot that you get when you book an appointment. But to really explore what's important to an individual takes much more time.
If somebody comes to you and says that they're not sleeping very well, there's a reason. In 10 minutes, you can't get to the bottom of that reason why they're not sleeping. But in an hour, I can.
So we can really spend time with
people to find out what it is that really matters to them, and that's the key thing.
Social prescribing is a fantastic way of connecting people who need services within the community and giving them that one-to-one support that a social prescribing link worker gives to people.
The beauty about it is an umbrella. It's not just one thing. It can be linked to charity, it can be linked to gyms, it can be linked to general practitioners.
I think one of the really interesting things about social prescribing is, first of all, it's to try not to think of them as patients, but actually to think of them as people.
Social prescribing has a huge benefit for patients.
Usually when you make an appointment with your doctor, you can only discuss like your rash or your ankle. You can't discuss everything, but with a social prescriber, we're here to listen to anything and everything.
We try to adopt this kind of strength-based approach because it's not this model of, you know, you're broken, let me fix you. It's you're managing really well, but obviously you need a little bit more help.
Social prescription is about empowerment, to get these people the confidence again to take more control in their life.
When they offer patients advice like please change your diet, exercise or be more active, people aren't necessarily equipped with how to make those changes. And a social prescriber is ideally placed to take that person from their point of need to where they can meet that need.
As pressures on GP surgeries have increased, they're trying to find ways to tackle some of the more complex characters passing through their surgery in a more innovative way.
The population is getting older, lots of more medical conditions. We're going to be working harder and harder. And these new people came on, these link workers, which I wasn't really sure what they do. But what was fantastic was they were slowly taking away a lot of our workload and doing it really well.
I did a referral and the patient feedback was really good. The information I got was brilliant. It saved me a lot of time.
We have been using social prescribing over the last 5 years, and if it didn't work, we wouldn't put our investment and our energy into it.
We've seen a reduction in the number of GP appointments for those particular patients where the social prescribing link worker has been involved.
We have multidisciplinary team meetings where we sit and talk about specific patients, and the social prescribers attend those meetings and they'll pitch in and they'll say, oh, we could just contact that patient and say X, Y, Z. It's really helpful.
Social prescribing in London is a key part of dealing with health inequalities.
I think there are a lot of people who fall through the cracks who aren't always picked up by services.
We do have health inequalities, we do have poverty, we do have homelessness, and we do have, hunger and so on.
So if someone's being evicted, that's the thing, that's their focus on their mind. They don't want to talk about their health. They want to know, I need my housing resolved.
So the access for people in London, I think social prescribing could make a real difference.
So what we're able to do is link them with organisations who can help to ease those problems, help them find solutions, recognise who they can actually go to.
Having a positive partnership between the council, the PCNs and ourselves is being really vital for us being able to reach the community.
No one of us is going to have the answer at any given time. So by creating a sharing and learning environment, we're able to go further, faster, and learn together. Now, many of these inequalities are long-standing and they were predates with COVID. But COVID has certainly shone a light on inequalities and in many instances has made them worse.
The need for social prescribing, I think, has increased exponentially with COVID.
When I speak to some of the patients, they're on their own all day, every day, weeks on end.
The pandemic has exposed in Technicolor issues within our communities that we knew existed, but now we just can't ignore.
Patients who were previously vulnerable are now even more in need. They are more isolated, they're more lonely, there's often more financial pressures, employment issues.
The pandemic was an opportunity for us to demonstrate what we could do, to show how adaptable we can be, because we've changed the way that we provided our service, overnight.
It has provided an opportunity for us to really highlight the fantastic need and niche that social prescribing has within London.
Social prescribing team members are a huge and important resource for commissioners.
We also understand that sometimes there'll be things that are missing, that if we link with people and speak with people about that we might be able to fill those gaps.
Social prescribers are really well placed to identify gaps in service provision because they've had that opportunity to have a slightly longer conversation with the residents about their needs.
What it gives you is really rich data in terms of what is actually happening to an individual. And I think that helps commissioners like myself to look at better informed decisions around how we design services.
We all react to change in different ways. Social prescribing is all new.
Two of the practices, our PCNs had never referred a patient to social prescribing previously. But having those social prescribers going into those practices, they've realized the benefits and are now very keen advocates of it. So it's amazing the turnaround that's been achieved in a relatively small time frame.
I'll tell you, I'm a very medical person. I'm all about medicine, all about evidence-based, but I've been wowed by the impact social prescribing can have.
Social prescribing has a huge role to play in making sure that the NHS is not only sustainable, it's functional.
Sometimes the smallest thing can help someone, and just that link into their community and that extra support has just made all the difference.
So every PCN can hire social prescribers. This will mean that our patients get the services that they need and deserve.
I feel a little bit better that I know that I have improved someone's life on a daily basis, simply because I was able to connect them to something that really changed their life.
I am actually really excited about the fact that we are going to be able to make a huge difference at a level that we've never been able to do before. It's not just about popping pills, it's not just about getting appointments, it's about empowering our patients to make a difference in their own lives. That's priceless.
Great. That if I can't imagine there's a dry eye in the house after watching that film. I've seen it once before, and every time, the second time I've seen it now, it's just absolutely so emotional. Actually, I think for all of us who are involved in social prescribing, to see that incredible testament to the power, the transformation that social prescribing is and will achieve and is achieving. And the huge recognition of its importance within the health and community systems, and the incredibly important role of social prescribing link workers. Katie, just wanted to bring you back in. Did you have any sort of immediate responses to that as we sort of wrap up and move on to the E&O section?
Thank you. Yes, I mean, fantastic video. You know, it's some of the statements and the voices are so powerful and so evocative and sort of full of energy. So really amazing. I think it's really important to say, though, that we are just at the beginning of our journey, aren't we? You know, there's still so much to be done and so much for us all to be sort of like working together on. And it's just wonderful to have all of you in this room today, because you are the champions. You are the people who I talk about light fires in all of the places where you work, and create that energy. And so let's take today and go forward together.
Great, thank you. And we would really love to hear from you about how this event has been for you. As I said, we're going to be sending you out a feedback form shortly after the event, but it'd be great to just hear from you now while you're in the room, and your immediate feelings about the event, how it's been for you, anything you would have liked a bit more of, anything potentially you'd have liked a little bit less of. We're also interested in the kind of frequency that you would like to have these London town halls on social prescribing. We want to take these forwards in 2021. We want you to be part of co-creating these town halls. Everybody in the room has as we've discussed all through this morning, an important role in terms of shaping social prescribing as it goes forwards. As Katie's just said, we're just at the foothills, really, of its development. And this is where we all come in terms of, shaping the future of social prescribing and shaping the future of how communities, local authorities, voluntary sector, and the health sector all work together. So it'd be really great to hear your thoughts on today. And as I say, we will be sending you out a feedback form very, very shortly. Just some thoughts from me, really. I think social prescribing is going to be an incredibly important part of the recovery for London. The GLA has highlighted it, and others have as well, the NHS and Healthy London Partnership, as being absolutely critical as we go through the next few months. We know that social prescribing link workers will be very important in terms of reaching the most vulnerable in our communities around vaccination. And we know that they will play a hugely important role in terms of how we reach those who sometimes will most need the vaccination, but potentially might be those who are hardest for the system to reach. In doing that, I think it's worth thinking about how we do that in a way, in a social prescribing way. It will be an opportunity for social prescribing link workers, as they did in the months of April and May, to have contact again with hundreds and thousands of people potentially through this next few months around vaccinations. And we can quite easily turn those conversations into social prescribing conversations, as well as obviously reaching people in terms of getting them booked in to have their vaccinations. So, there's a real opportunity actually for us to, as we all did in those early months, to again have social prescribing conversations with a whole lot of people. But then as we go through the months following that, I think it's going to be through 2021, thinking about the recovery, thinking about what's happening to communities. We know that that COVID will mean there will be a tremendous impact, and there has been, and there will continue to be a tremendous impact on our communities going forwards. And social prescribing has a very, very important role to play in the recovery stages, which we know will last not just even in 2021, but beyond that as well. So social prescribing's role will become, if ever, even more important as we go through 2021 and beyond. So I think it's going to be interesting, and I think the next town hall will be able to think about maybe focusing on that amongst other things as well. And as I say, we absolutely want to hear from everybody about what you want these town halls to focus on. Lianna, can I just bring you in now? Is there anything further before we move into the ENO, or Katie, if you've got any further comments before we move into the next bit? And I want everybody to stay for the next bit, because the next bit is going to be a finale like no other.
No, I just wanted to say thank you to all the contributors today. I think we've been talking about it on the side, some of the speakers, and I think Bill very cleverly said that, and I think we've all been very conscious of this, that it just doesn't end with this meeting. This is the start of us listening and acting on the ideas and the challenges and the inspiration that you guys are bringing. So thank you to all of the speakers today, and for everybody that's getting involved in the chat, and mostly to the link workers who never cease to inspire me, and feel very privileged to be working with you all. So thank you very much. And obviously stick around for it sounds like it's going to be a fantastic session, and for all you guys that are looking for sessions to do with your clients that don't involve them going to a community centre, I've got a feeling this is going to be right up your street. So take care, everybody, and see you in the new year.
And from myself and Katie, who've been co-hosting today, and thank you, Lianna. Again, to repeat, huge thanks to everybody for coming, and for all those who've contributed, particularly for today, the panelists and the speakers and so on. It's been absolutely fantastic to have you all here today. In introducing the English National Opera, I just wanted to mention that we've had an amazing collaboration with the ENO and the Bromley by Bow Centre over a number of years. And I happened to see a most breathtaking performance at the Victoria and Albert Museum of a whole lot of community members, some of whom had been socially prescribed to sing with the English National Opera. And this opera took place, it was snippets of Aida took place across the halls of the Victoria and Albert Museum, with a kind of moving audience through the halls of hundreds of people watching them. And these were community members from East London and around London who had been practicing with the English National Opera over a period of months for this incredibly breathtaking and moving performance that they did at the Victoria and Albert Museum. And as I think Lianna said earlier, it's really important that social prescribing link workers get to participate in some of the activities that they are prescribing to their clients and get an understanding of what they are. So we have today with us Jenny and Susie from the English National Opera to take us out of today's wonderful town hall with an opportunity, I think, for us all to participate. So I'm going to hand over to you now. You know, this is going to be a finale like no other, and wishing everybody a really good break over the holiday season as well, and looking forward to touching base with you all in the new year. And as I say, we're going to be sending out a feedback form very shortly. We would love you to complete that, and please return it so that we can continue to construct the future town halls with you as well. Okay, over to you, English National Opera.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Good morning, well, sort of good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jenny Molliker. I'm the director of E&O Baylis, which is the English National Opera's Learning and Participation programme. It's such a pleasure to be with you this morning and to hear about your inspirational work. Here at E&O, we believe that the English National Opera is about more than opera on the main stage in the London Coliseum, and we want to make a positive difference to people's lives. Through our learning and participation work, we work with around 20,000 people a year across a range of programmes in health and wellbeing, education and skills, both in London and nationally. Last June, we were incredibly fortunate to have a very inspiring conversation with Dr. Michael Dixon, Sir Sam Everington and Professor Ajit Lalvani to talk about the role that E&O could possibly play within social prescribing and how we might be able to be useful. And quite so quickly in that conversation, we arrived at a discussion around long COVID and the issues around long-term breathlessness and associated anxiety for COVID. And very quickly from that conversation in June, we were fortunate to be introduced to the respiratory team at Imperial College Healthcare Trust under the amazing leadership of Dr. Sarah Elkin. And with the team at Imperial, with the respiratory team, co-designed a 6-week online programme called E&O Breathe, which is a breathing and wellbeing programme for COVID survivors to empower them with techniques to manage their breathlessness and anxiety post-COVID. We launched the pilot in September and it just ended in November, and we're delighted with the results and feedback that we've had from that pilot programme. So 90% of people who took part in E&O Breathe attributed either positive or strong positive impact on their breathlessness, and 91% of those who took part said that the programme had 91% said that the programme had improved their anxiety as well. We're really delighted with how the pilot went. We're in January at a point where we're going to be rolling out the programme across London and regionally. So if you'd like to find out more information, please don't hesitate to email us. We have an email address for it, which is breathe@eno.org. But what I'd love to do now is to hand you over to the amazing Susie Zumper. Susie is a vocal specialist who works with us at E&O and who has led our pilot programme and will lead many of our sessions going forward, and is also the director of E&O Breathe. And what I should say is that Susie's going to give for us today, in the next 10 minutes, just a potted version of the E&O Breathe programme to give you a real taster of what participants do. And over the course, what she'll be doing with you in 10 minutes is a potted version of what they get over a 6-week online programme with a whole bank of digital resources and content that patients can access both between sessions and post-programme. So I'm going to leave you to the and I hope you really get a bit of fun and enjoy the next 10 minutes.
Hello, lovely people. It's really a privilege to be here. Sadly for me, most of you have got your video cameras off, so if you can bear it, I'd love to be able to see you. Oh, happy days. This This is wonderful. So I'm just going to tell you a tiny bit. Oh, look, there you all are. Hooray. Also, because having heard all that inspiring speaking, it's so wonderful to actually see you. I love that. Good. So at the core of ENO Breathe is lullabies. And the rationale for having lullabies right at the centre of our programme is because they're rooted in love, in tenderness, in caring, and they're really excellent for non-specialists to sing. And also culturally, they cross cultures, boundaries, so they're appropriate for everybody. But also the reason that we have them on our programme is because they build an emotional connection to the drier elements that we're doing. So this is looking at breathing, but once you've engaged with some of those other things, there's kind of a positive emotional connection which makes everything else more memorable and hangs it together a little bit. So I reckon I'm going to work with you. I'm pretty good at timekeeping, and this is going to be no longer than 10 minutes. I reckon maybe even a little bit under. So the first thing I want you to do is just notice how you're sitting. So obviously, we're all sitting in front of screens, which is not ideal. Oh, look at you all moving. This is excellent. Very good. So can you sit with your shoulders over your hips? And the first thing I want you to do is just notice how you're breathing. So don't do anything different or special, but just become a little bit aware of your breath. And what's really hard for long COVID sufferers is all these things that we've never thought about, most of us have never thought about, suddenly become, you tie yourself in knots trying to figure out. So just stopping, first of all, is a really good thing to do. So notice the pace of your breath. Notice whether it's deep, whether it feels like a nice low breath, or whether it's high and anxious. Fantastic. And I want you to take one hand, put it underneath your seat. If you're not sitting in the right kind of seat, just sit on your hand, that'll work too. And then I want you to tilt your head in the opposite direction. So this isn't like a flop, it's a really intentional tilt in a diagonal line away. And then take your other hand and very gently just pop it on your neck. That's it. And so all of this is gentle and soft, but I want you to just have a little feel of those muscles and tendons and just encourage them to release. So don't forget to breathe while you're doing this. Oh, my lovely pilot group, forever holding their breath. Resist the temptation. It's because you're concentrating. It's very good. Lovely. And now come back to neutral and just have a little move and notice if anything feels slightly different, a bit freer. And can you do the same on the other side? So take the hand that was on your neck, put it underneath your seat. The spare hand is going to go there, that's it, lovely. And your head is in the opposite direction. So really try and keep that a nice, clean diagonal. And in designing the program content for this, it was super important because everything's on Zoom. We're all so tired of it, aren't we? But because everything's on Zoom, we need things that are going to give people a really immediate bit of positive feedback so that there's immediately like a reason to be doing it and a reason to participate. So these exercises are things that you can sort of feel the benefit of or hint towards the benefit of really quickly. That's good. And then come back. So what you might feel is just that your neck is a little bit freer and looser, and frankly we all need that because we all sit in front of our computers the entire time these days. Good, wonderful. So now what I'm going to do, and I'm really sorry if you share an office, is I'm going to make you cast a spell. And the reason for that is this is a really good vocal warm-up. Oh, look at all the cameras go off, I love it. Excellent. So over one shoulder you're going to do this. You're going to go shh, 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 shh. Just try it with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shh, 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 shh. Amazing. Then you're going to go to the other shoulder and you're going to go s, 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 s. Try that one and s, 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 s. Brilliant. So we're going to put those together. And the reason you're on mute is not because I don't want to hear you. I would love to hear you all, believe me. But because the digital delay just makes everything flaky. So it just makes noise. So instead, I just have to imagine you. So good. Let's do that both together. 1, 2, 3, 4. Shh, 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 s, s. Fabulous. Then you're going to get some ingredients and you're going to throw them into your cauldron, which sounds like this. You go. Amazing. So this feels really childish, I know, but what we're doing is reflexively breathing between each thing and attaching a narrative, a story to the warm-up so that it's memorable. So we're going to do that whole little thing 3 times. Are you ready with me? 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. Again. Our spells worked. So pick up the little hot cake that you've conjured in front of you. Hold it on your hand. Smell it. It smells amazing, by the way. And I want you to make the kind of delicious sound that you'd make if you were auditioning to be a presenter on a kids' cooking show. So I'll show you mine first so that you know you're not going to be on your own. Mine goes like this. Show me yours and... Okay, I feel like yours was quite restrained. I could be wrong. But from here it felt restrained. Can you all go a little bit further this time? And... glorious. Put it in your mouth, but it's too hot, so you need to get air in there, which sounds like this. Show me. Excellent. And that basically just raises our soft palate, which is a good thing, believe me, for singing. Then, can you say for me, sing? All say it. Sing. Glorious. If you take away the S and the I, you're left with NG, this sound. Make that one for me. Good. And that's going to be the sound of our swallow. So it's going to go... and then the cake hits our stomach. Our stomach, like we've got a collective stomach. Bit weird, but try it for me. And... but when it gets there, it turns out it's not delicious. It's going to come back, which sounds like this. And I want to see your tongues. So try that for me. And... I want to see like big, wide, flat tongues. Can you just do it from the very top for me? Strong and wrong. So if your version is different to mine, I don't mind, but I would like yours to have lots of conviction. Let's go from the top. Good luck. 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. Again. Pick up the cake, smell it. Put it in your mouth, but it's too hot. Swallow. Glorious. Okay, so now that we're warmed up, we've warmed up our breathing apparatus a little bit. We've used bits of our voice that don't get so much use in speech. So now that I've warmed you up, it'd be a shame not to teach you a song, right? So we're just going to quickly sing the simplest of our lullabies. So I've curated like a list of lullabies from all around the world, and I'm keeping adding to them. And in addition to that, on this programme, we've got beautiful, specifically recorded performances of operas from lullabies that are going to be sent to our participants as a kind of little perfect jewel of a gift. So this song is called Abby Yo-Yo. Say it for me. Brilliant. And when we're speaking, so singing in English is kind of tricky because we are spectacularly lazy as English speakers. And the whole reason that loads of our humour works is because of that completely deadpan face. But when we're singing, we need to use our whole faces. So Abby Yo-Yo, say it for me. Amazing. And Abby Yo-Yo is the name of a giant in South African folklore. So this is a South African lullaby. And luckily for us, all we've got to do is repeat the giant's name. And this song was made famous in the West by Pete Seeger, but it's a traditional lullaby of the Bantu people in South Africa. And yeah, so the words are Abby Yo-Yo. So the first little bit goes, Abby Yo-Yo, Abby Yo-Yo. Sing it with me. So we have Abby Yo-Yo and Abby Yo-Yo, Abby Yo-Yo. And again. Abi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo. Brilliant. And now listen, I know that singing into your computer feels, let's acknowledge that it feels weird. It absolutely does. But lullabies are about soothing, calming, conveying love. And I don't want to be mean, but I feel like potentially we're conveying more serial killer vibes at the moment. So can I just ask you all to breathe in that feeling of love and calm and sing that phrase again? So I'll sing it first. Abi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo. Your turn. Abi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo. It's so much better. I want Delphine to sing me to sleep. Delphine's got a lovely calm vibe. So it goes, abi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo. Sing that phrase twice. Abi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo. Abi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo. Then the last little bit goes, abi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo. Try that for me, and abi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo. And again, abi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo. Amazing. Can we try it from the very top then? So we've got twice round the first phrase, twice round the second phrase, see you at the end. Get your calm on. Ready? Abi-yo-yo, 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 bi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo, 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 bi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, abi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo, bi-yo-yo. You are all very, very game. And what made me really happy is that I kept seeing little blue things flash up, wondering if I was going to ask you to unmute, which means you were singing. That's my like secret way of absolutely knowing. So thank you ever so much. I'm going to hand back to Katie and Dan, the hosts, but you've been very game and it's gorgeous to sing with you. And we would love you to send us some participants our way. We've got our next phase, we've got space for 500. They're signing up just now and I can't wait to meet them.
Wow, that was amazing. Thank you so much. That was such an inspiring end to an incredibly inspiring morning. Katie, were you still with us too?
I certainly am. It was lovely. I really enjoyed it. I had my family making lunch in the background thinking I was absolutely mad, but they all thought my son actually started to join in. So yeah, really wonderful. Thank you for that. And and a really big thank you to everybody who's hung around, and I hope really enjoyed that as well. And obviously sort of a really fantastic sort of festive season to everybody. And I'm hoping that everyone's going to get a bit of a rest. We've all worked so hard and people need some downtime.
Yeah, and so please do refer on, I guess we will circulate the details of, or are they on your website, the ENO website, of how to refer to this program? That would be...
Yeah, so we can send some details for you to send around, Dan, but you can go on the ENO website or you can email us on breathe@eno.org.
Great, fantastic. And it's one of the areas that we definitely want to kind of build stronger bridges with in terms of social prescribing and arts and cultural activities. So thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you so much for this amazing experience. I'd also like, as well as thanking everybody who's been here today and the contributions of everybody, I think a really special thanks to Lianna, who's had to leave us to go on to something else but this morning now, and to Bill and the team in Healthy London Partnerships. Susie and Kerry, who helped put so much effort into getting that film ready and fully kind of edited in time for today as well. And to everybody who's participated in today. This has been a tremendous experience. The chat is amazing. And I think that's a real kind of recognition of what an incredible day it's been. Or incredible morning it's been. And really look forward to the next one as well. And how we keep this momentum going and how we keep supporting the development of social prescribing across London and building these collaborative bridges across the sectors, which is so important. Katie, I don't know if you've got any final words to say.
No, I think we should just say a big thank you and let everybody get off to have some lunch.
Great. Okay, so look forward to seeing everyone in 2021. Please fill in the feedback form that will be coming your way and stay in touch. And let's look forward to a fantastic year for taking social prescribing on the next leg of its journey. Great. Bye for now, everybody.
Bye.